This is Wraith from Wraith Rain. I'm an author of serialized gay romance fiction. Every week on this podcast, I'll be reading a chapter from one of my gay fantasy shifter serials called Dragon's Reign. I'll explain at the break how you can find out more about this story and others I write. So let's get to it. Chapter 16. Turning back, going forward. Valerius plucked Caden off of the road with his talons. His clawed hand easily fit around Caden's waist and chest with room to spare. He heard a muffled, "Holy shit!" as they went airborne. They were not going far, not as the dragonflies, just up to the top of High Reach to his quarters. He was just going to drop the boy lightly down on the balcony when Caden called up to him, "Wait! Wait!" Valerius believed the young man was going to argue with him to go back down to the road, but he realized the moment he looked down at Caden that the young man was engrossed with the view. "It's beautiful. The city, spread out against the darkness," Caden said as he stared down at the many-tiered city in awe. Valerius craned his neck to look as well. It was beautiful. The white gold lights of the city were like nearer stars. There were fires out in the plains as well, where people were celebrating the anniversary. And likely the white dragon, too. Shimmering curtains of light in the darkness. High Reach was separated from all other cities so their light could not pollute hers. He loved this view with the city ablaze, while the forests around were dark and deep. "Will we be able to fly over this together?" Caden asked with a self-conscious laugh. I admit, I'd be a little afraid to fly on my own." "Fly with us?" Raziel hissed as if affronted. "Is that not what mates do? Fly together, among other things?" Valerius pushed Raziel. This mate thing and the fact that he had not been told about it demanded he continue to make Raziel uncomfortable, even if it made him a little uncomfortable too. "Would you want him to fly with us?" Raziel asked back. Valerius looked down at the young man who was contentedly staring off into the sky. He'd only flown with another dragon shifter during the war, and that was to show the humans' true strength and to put terror in their hearts. Esme had flown on his right and Ilarion on his left. What would it be like to have the white dragon gliding beside him? Head held high, eyes half shut as they enjoyed the wind. They could dive and soar and hunt together. And when they came back to High Reach, transforming in the night wind to drop gracefully to the balcony, they would be laughing. I do not know, Raziel." Valerius finally answered his spirit's question with a lie. The black dragon spirit muttered words Valerius could not hear, words in the ancient tongue that Valerius was one of the rare few to understand. "I swear I could look at this view forever," Caden murmured. "Could you? I thought for sure you would be grousing about how I stopped you from solving things with Marban," Valerius thought. And as if he could hear Valerius on some level, Caden's gaze dropped the crowd of people where Marban was at their head. Far below them, Marban was now an indistinct ant from this height, but it was amazing what damage that ant could do. Caden's young body tensed in his hold. I guess, though, we have business first, or you do," Caden said, "since you've stopped me from handling it." That got him a petulant look. "I could have handled it, Valerius. I just needed a little more time." "A little more time and a little more rope to hang yourself with, I'm sure," Valerius thought. Caden, though, did not appear to hear him this time. Raziel's head dipped, and his spirit's red eyes narrowed. He wondered if the black dragon was blocking this communication for its own purposes. He would have to wait and speak to Caden after dealing with this mess. He lightly dropped Caden onto the balcony. Caden came to the railing, and Valerius dropped down so that they were almost eye to eye. The young man shocked him by reaching out and petting his nose. His nose wriggled, and Caden laughed as he continued to pet him. "You're not so scary," Caden said with a grin. "Oh, don't get that affronted look, Valerius. You're not that scary to me. I see you. You're a softy. You're trying to protect me. No, you are a mate. What you do has consequences. That is why You were so innocent, so foolish, Valerius thought, and wished the words could get to Caden. I know Marban is a bad man. I know that he's roped Rose into this, and probably a lot of others. His plots and machinations, Caden said softly and shook his head. I know he wants power for himself, that he likely doesn't really care for the people he claims to represent, but... But? How can there be a but in this, Caden? How foolish can you be? Valerius thought. But he has a point, Caden said, his expression thoughtful. He then focused on Valerius. I know you're really annoyed by all of this, and I'm sorry, but could you be gentle with them? They're just excited, even though they should be more thrilled to see you than me. Valerius lifted one eyebrow. Raziel had ceded control to him completely and cocked his head to the side. You believe I care what they think of me, Caden? Not for my ego, I don't, but for the stability of the realm, I do, Valerius thought. But this was beyond communicating through movements. They would talk after he had dealt with Marban, the Faith, and whoever else wanted to make his day. Valerius flapped back out of touching distance and pointed into the castle. He wanted Caden to go inside. There would be food. He had not canceled the order for it. The fire for warmth and quiet, so perhaps Caden could think just how insane his attempts to bargain with Marban had been. The old swarm shifter was as cagey as they came. Caden held up his hands, though he did not budge from the railing. I'll stay here. I won't try to shift and follow you down or even fuss with the doors. I just want to see what happens, to make sure you don't crisp anybody. Valerius let his red eyes glow, sending the distinct message that the only crisping would be done to Caden if he didn't stay safe. Then with another final hard look, he turned and dove down to the road again. The wind whistled around his huge form as he streaked downwards like an arrow in flight. People let out soft cries. Some in the crowd crouched, fearing he would come so low that he would hit them. Those of the Faith were prostrate, for multiple reasons. These people would not listen to his words. They wanted a spectacle. They wanted a show. He would give them one. He soared up so that he was at the very head of this invading crowd. His chest faced them, his wings flapping at his side, his tail curled into a single loop below him. Now sure, he had all of their attention. He threw his head back and breathed a pillar of red gold fire into the air. The helicopters were keeping a very safe distance. There were more yells and shouts. Then there was silence. He stared down at all of them, seemingly meeting each and every one of their gazes before he moved again. There were unlit metal bowls filled with kindling that were to be lit later that night at midnight to celebrate the anniversary's close. But he would use them now. He flew straight ahead, breathing fire on the bowls as he passed over them, leading all the way back to the mid from the crowd that blocked the road. He then soared back along the other side, lighting the bowls there. By the time he had returned, there were 2 lines of fire leading back to the mid. The bowls leading to the castle remained unlit, so it was clear what he intended for the crowd to do. Go home. At that moment, Shioni stepped into the space that he had vacated not that long ago on the bridge, and she transformed into her Sphinx form. It was a remarkable shift. The air went all gold around her like the shifting sands of the Sahara under the noon sun, or gold dust rising up in an ancient tomb. When the golden substance cleared, there stood a Sphinx, 15 feet tall, with the head of an Egyptian pharaoh in full headdress and the body of a lion. She smiled benignly upon them all. Yet there was more fear and scuffling at her appearance. In some ways, dragons were more understandable to people in this age and country than a Sphinx. She was the true oddity, and the people were unsure what she could or would do. The one animal she was similar to, a lion, was not exactly the kindest of creatures. It was a predator. But unlike most shifters, She could talk easily and assured them, no matter what her outward appearance showed, she was still the kind and wise Shioni. Her voice was low and melodious, but somehow carried as if coming from a speaker system. "Good people, you see that it is your king's desire that you return to your homes." She pointed to Valerius, who hovered above them, very tempted to point back down the road from where they had come, but he kept his peace. "We know that today has been a day of wonders, and that you have many questions. We promise you answers to those and much more. But tonight is the night to celebrate the anniversary. Go back to your families, go back to your friends, and await the fireworks that will come. Tomorrow will bring clarity with the sun." There were more gasps, and he saw the flash of many phones going off as they took pictures of the rare appearance of the Sphinx shifter. But they all did eventually turn around, without even murmurs of protest. Instead, their voices were filled with wonder. "A Sphinx! We saw the blessed Sphinx shifter today!" One woman twittered to her companion. "Valerius's fire! It was so magnificent! His scales shine in the moonlight! I never thought to see him so up close," another babbled, already scrolling through his phone's pictures of the evening. Valerius really, perhaps, should do some photo shoots for the people like Shioni suggested, but it seemed disrespectful. He listened, though, for any word about Caden, and he did hear them. "The young man! Blonde hair. Very handsome, yes, but who is he? He wasn't dressed like anyone important." A voice that sounded almost horrified by that fact. "He's one of us," a little boy around 10 in shabby clothes remarked to a man that might be his father. "He was dressed just like me, but he was important, wasn't he, Dad?" The father smiled and took his son's hand. "I think he was." King Valerius certainly thought so. The boy's forehead furrowed. "But he flew away." The father's expression darkened. "Because of Marban." Hush! Don't say his name. Let's just go home," the father said, and firmly pulled the son towards the mid. Smart man, sweet boy. Caden would have loved to have made that boy's day by shifting for him. He would have taken pictures for hours to everyone's content, Valerius thought. "Because the white dragon preens. Wants everyone to see its pretty scales." Unable to help himself but to poke the dragon, Valerius said, "So you think its scales are pretty?" More mumbling in the ancient tongue and black smoke was his response. I hope you are enjoying Dragon's Reign so far. Dragon's Reign is just one of the massive gay romance stories I host on my website, wraithrain.com. Wraithrain.com is a membership website where readers pay a fee to access the site and read the content, post comments and suggestions about where the story should go. At the end of this chapter, I'll tell you where you can find out more about Dragon's Reign, me, and the other gay romances I write. Chuckling inwardly, Valerius then glanced down to see Marban and Rose remaining in place for long moments as the rest of the crowd turned and started walking down the road. Even those who had likely been paid by or were under Marban's thumb had retreated as the 1-2 punch of his and Shioni's appearances sank in. It wasn't every day when the Black Dragon lit one's path home or when the Sphinx Shifter ordered one to follow it. Marban's head lifted to meet Valerius's gaze. In those black eyes and gritted jaw, Valerius saw the old humiliations that the ancient swarm shifter had felt he'd endured over the ages. Valerius looked back at him coolly. It was one thing to have a war between the two of them, but quite another to bring an innocent like Caden into it. The young woman, Rose, gently tugged at Marban's arm, trying to urge him to leave. She looked wretched, guilty for betraying her nascent friendship with Caden, evidently, but also not liking to see this failed power play with Valerius either. Finally, Marban turned and looped his arm through Rose's as they walked back down the road, away from the castle and the seat of power that Marban wanted so badly to take. Valerius soared in a circle to meet Shioni's gaze. She was watching Marban and Rose leave as well. Her expression, though, was sad and troubled, but she often felt badly for people who did not deserve it whatsoever. He moved his head towards the crowd behind her, the one that was going to be far more difficult to handle than the one that had left. This crowd, full of politicians and world leaders, would demand answers and would not leave until they had gotten them. Caden's family were also looking anxiously up towards his quarters. Whatever they thought he was going to do to Caden was absurd. Surely they could see by now that he wasn't going to attack the boy again. But they needed time to talk without distractions like Caden's parents. Valerius doubted that Shione would be able to keep them away for long, so he'd best take advantage of the time he did have. He gestured with his head for her to go back towards the castle. She nodded in agreement. She loved being in the thick of unpredictable and changing times, despite any protests she might make. This would be a challenge for her. She only needed one. He had plenty of challenges himself in talking to Caden next. I need to tell him that he is a mate, and how that changes everything, Valerius thought. The white dragon knows? The white dragon can tell him. We should fly, Raziel grumbled. Later, perhaps with the white dragon. Valerius teased, but his stomach tightened pleasurably at the thought. Raziel, however, looked askance. I think you doth protest too much, Raziel, Valerius murmured. He swept back up to his quarters. The 3 helicopters buzzed around the castle for a few moments, waiting to see what else might happen, but there was a no-fly zone around his quarters, so they could not see much. Caden, however, was still standing at the railing, looking up at him. He'd clearly seen the whole thing. Valerius transformed just above the balcony and dropped down into a graceful crouch before straightening. Suddenly, his favorite red silk robe was being thrust at him. He blinked. Here, I thought you could use this. It's cold, Caden said, eyes firmly fixed on his face and not his naked body, let alone his cock. Thank you. No problem. He took it and slid it on. The silk slid sensuously over his skin. He knotted the sash in front while Caden clearly looked away until he was finished. Valerius took this moment of being the only one looking to study Caden. He noted that Caden was handsome in a very fresh-faced American sort of way, but it was his eyes where the true beauty lay. They were luminous and reflected a certain clarity that Valerius rarely saw. He found himself reaching out and lightly brushing his fingers down the side of Caden's face. Caden turned quickly into the unexpected touch, those eyes wide and a little alarmed, like he always seemed to be when Valerius did something he hadn't thought possible. You petted me earlier. I thought I'd get my shot in, Valerius told him in explanation. Caden's face lit up in a grin, and a bubbly laugh left his mouth. I couldn't help it. You look so cute. Cute? Valerius pulled a face as if he were truly considering whether he was cute or not. Caden lightly punched his arm. Oh, come on. Cuteness is in the eye of the beholder. So in other people's eyes, you're a frightening monster, but in mine, I'm cute. It says something about you, Caden. I'm not sure what it is, but it says something. But then Valerius did flash him a genuine smile. Come. We should go inside. It is cold, and I think the lack of food is affecting your thinking. Food? I thought they might not bring any up here since you sent me down to the kitchens. Caden eagerly followed after him. His expression was almost comical when he saw the table empty except for the fruit from earlier. He was likely starving, and fruit was not going to cut it. Oh, can we order something or... I'm often famished at night, and only meat will do. I keep thin cuts of beef up here to grill on the fire. Hold on while I get them, Valerius said over his shoulder as he made his way to the disguised refrigerator that looked like a wooden cabinet. He pulled it open, and there were platters of different cuts of beef, some marinated, others simply plain, and a variety of sauces to dip them in after they'd been cooked, from a mustard-based sauce to a horseradish one that burned one's nostrils with the strength of the fresh root. Sit by the fire. We can eat there. But Caden was at his shoulder, taking the platter of beef from his hands, leaving him to simply carry the sauces over to the fire. Caden was making what almost sounded like motorboat sounds. He clearly was wrapped up in the idea of sizzling steak on the fire. We put the meat directly on the grill, right? Yes, there are tongs to turn them and take them off. I'll get something for us to eat with. He set the sauces down on the stone slabs that surrounded the fire pit and moved gracefully over to another cabinet where there were plates and silverware. He rarely concerned himself with them, just eating the sizzling steaks hot from the fire, but with a guest, He should be more civilized. Already he heard Caden give an appreciative sound as he laid a steak on the grill, and the sizzle and pop of beef fat could be heard. The glorious smell of cooking meat filled the air almost immediately. He grabbed the dishes and headed back to what was almost a homey scene. Caden had out the pair of tongs and was turning the meat over, hissing a little at the heat of the flames. "That fire cannot burn you," Valerius told him, "even if you were to stick your hand on the grill grate itself or pick up an ember." "Valerius, don't touch that!" Caden cried as Valerius plucked an ember from the fire up in his hand. The young man lunged to knock it out of Valerius's palm, clearly scared for him, but Valerius moved it out of reach in a lightning-fast move. He held it between his thumb and forefinger. "See? No burning, no smoking even. Do you want to try?" No, definitely no. Besides, I'm an ice dragon. So wouldn't I get burned?" Caden asked. "Steaks, I like mine rare," Valerius answered without actually answering his question. "Oh shit, hold on." Caden quickly took off several of the rare slices of beef from the grate and put them on a plate for him. "I do not think that you would be burned from a little fire like this. Now my flames would be a different matter, but nothing like this can hurt you." Valerius used his fingers to pick one steak up and dip it into the sauce before devouring it. After he finished chewing, Caden replenished his plate and then filled his own before they both sat down on the couch and proceeded to eat in quiet. His gaze kept going to the doors, though. Caden's parents and friends would be up there any moment. Shioni would only be able to keep them occupied for so long downstairs, with the politicians and others trying to speak to them and her. "What's up?" Caden asked through a mouthful of meat and mustard sauce. "This sauce is awesome, by the way. God, I could drink it and, well, whatever. Clearly something is up. What's going on?" Valerius chewed his last piece of meat carefully. In fact, he may have chewed it 100 times. Caden's eyes narrowed at him, and he knew it was time to say something. He cleared his throat and dabbed his lips with his napkin. Caden threw his napkin at Valerius. "Cut it out! You're all strangely calm now, but tense as a bow. No longer angry, but if I plucked you, you would twang." Caden laughed. "I'm not tense." "Then why are you shouting? You're not tense like you were. I don't know. You look kind of afraid." "Not afraid. I mean, you would never be afraid of me, but you look sort of freaked out," Caden said as he devoured another bite of meat and put several more slices on the fire. "It is nice to eat like this with someone," Valerius blurted out. That hadn't been what he'd meant to say, but it distracted Caden from the conversation that they were not having, but which they needed to have, though he had no idea how to have this conversation. Caden got that deer in headlights look that so often crossed his face when Valerius did anything that wasn't growl at him. Suddenly that sunny smile was back. "Yeah, it is. It's really nice." But then he was right back at that other topic that Valerius wanted him to let go of. "So, what's wrong? Besides the usual that I'm the white dragon shifter in your territory and Raziel told me something I didn't know." Valerius cut him off. Did he hear footsteps outside? Yes, he did. Except there appeared to be only one set hurrying down the hall. He frowned. He fully expected the whole gang, but no, there was one. "What did it tell you?" Caden had mustard sauce on his chin, which Valerius wiped off gently with the napkin that had been used as a projectile against him. Caden smiled again and then ducked his head. "Was it something nice? Or something not nice?" It was. There was a frantic knock on his door. It was Shioni. He knew her knock and her footsteps. He wiped his mouth again and got up to go to the door. He didn't bother checking the tablet and simply unlocked them. Her face was flushed. She wore a robe of tawny silk. He stepped aside as she brushed past him in her anxiety. "Shioni, what is it?" Valerius asked. Caden also got up from his seat. "Yeah, Shioni, what's wrong?" "The dragons. The other dragons. They're coming. News reports show them leaving their territories, and I have messages." She got out, one of her hands rising to her throat. "That they are coming here. It must be about the white dragon. I thought we'd have more time and notice." "Oh, man. More dragons to be angry with me." Caden scrubbed a hand behind his head. Valerius winced. "It's not just because a new dragon is here. It's what Caden is." "What am I?" Caden's forehead furrowed. What else is Caden other than the 9th dragon shifter? Shione clearly couldn't imagine anything else more important than that. Valerius grimaced. He'd wanted to tell Caden this gently, but there was no real way to do that. So he did it bluntly. He is a mate to one of us. I am betting they're coming to try and win his love. I hope you enjoyed this week's chapter. If you want to read ahead in Dragon's Reign or read the many other stories hosted there, you can purchase a membership to get access to wraithrain.com, or you can continue to listen along here for free. If you'd like to learn more about wraithrain.com and me, there's a link in the description down below.